We spend our lives searching for answers. How can I be happier? How can I be more successful? How do I fix this problem? But what if all this searching has been in vain? What if the key to a deeper life isn't in the answers at all, but in a single, powerful question that most of us never think to ask? A question that has the power to reframe your entire existence. Are you ready to hear it? Your to-do list is a trap. Your 5-year plan is an illusion. Your constant search for the solution is the very thing keeping you stuck. Why? Because they are all answers to the wrong questions. The human mind is a brilliant problem-solving machine, but your soul is not a problem to be solved. In this journey together, we will press pause on the endless how-to and introduce the one what is question that can finally set you free. We will explore, through the profound wisdom of Carl Jung, why we are so addicted to the wrong kind of inquiry. And you will learn the practical, contemplative art of asking the questions that don't just find solutions, but reveal your soul. This is not another video with 5 easy steps. It is an invitation to learn the art of sacred inquiry. It is the very first step in authentic shadow work, the courage to stop looking for answers on the surface and to begin asking the questions that lead you into your own depth. The journey inward does not begin with a map. It begins with a question. For most of our lives, the mind operates like a frantic boardroom meeting that never ends. Different voices, all shouting tactical advice. Do this, fix that, achieve this. And the chairman of this noisy board always asks the same kind of question. The how-to question. How do I get the promotion? How do I fix my relationship? How do I stop feeling so anxious? How do I lose the weight? How do I make more money? How can I finally be happy? This is the default mode of our modern minds, the tyranny of the how-to. And we must be very clear, these are not bad questions. In fact, they're essential. These are the questions of the ego. And the ego's job is to manage, to control, to navigate the external world. These questions build bridges, they cure diseases, they run our lives. They are necessary for survival, but they are insufficient for a meaningful life. Here is the subtle trap. Because these questions are so effective at solving external problems, we mistakenly believe they can solve our internal ones as well. They cannot. When you ask a how-to question about your soul, you are treating your inner world like a broken appliance, like a project to be managed, and your soul will not be managed. Let me tell you about a man I worked with, Mark, a 52-year-old project manager. His entire professional life was built on answering the how-to question. He was brilliant at it. He could take a complex problem, break it down into 100 steps, and execute it flawlessly. And he tried to apply the same logic to the hollow ache in his own life. He felt a deep, persistent anxiety. So he created a project plan to fix it. The tasks on his list were all how-tos. How to meditate for 10 minutes a day. How to use a new productivity app to organize his time. How to optimize his sleep schedule. He executed his plan perfectly, and he only felt worse, more anxious, more exhausted, more like a failure, because he was doing everything right, but he still felt wrong. Mark's story is the story of so many of us. We are trapped on the surface. We are tinkering with the engine of our lives, adjusting the spark plugs, changing the oil, polishing the chrome, without ever once stopping to ask the most fundamental question of all. Where is this car actually going? And am I the one who chose the destination? The limitation of the how-to question is that it always assumes the goal is correct. It never questions the destination. It only seeks a more efficient route. It keeps you climbing the ladder of achievement without ever asking if the ladder is leaning against the right wall. It keeps you in the boardroom, endlessly debating tactics, while the quiet, wise founder of the company, your own self, is sitting in a forgotten room, waiting for someone to simply ask, "What is our real mission here?" This constant, frantic questioning is the engine of the burnout we spoke of. It is the engine of the comparison game. It is the engine that drives us to build a perfect persona, only to feel empty behind the mask. It is the very architecture of the collapse of achievement-based happiness. Pause for a moment. What is the one how-to question that runs on a constant loop in your own mind? The one you believe if you could just answer it, everything would be okay. If you feel comfortable, share it in the comments below. Not to find an answer, but simply to acknowledge the question itself. This acknowledgement is the first step out of the trap. Because once you see the question for what it is, a tool of the ego, a tactic for control, you create a space, a quiet space, a space where a different kind of inquiry can finally be heard. If the how-to question is the loud, anxious shout of the ego, what is the whisper of the self? If the how-to question is the loud, anxious shout of the ego, what then is the whisper of the self? It is a question of a completely different nature. It is not tactical. It is not about problem solving. It is about being. It is not a question that seeks a strategy. It is a question that invites a presence. It does not demand a solution. It opens a space. The questions of the self are the questions of what, who, and why, asked at the level of the soul. Let's look at the difference. It is the difference between two worlds. The ego asks, "How can I make more money?" It is a question of strategy, of accumulation. The self asks, "What is my true relationship with abundance?" It is a question of being, of flow. The ego asks, "How do I stop feeling burnt out?" It is a question that sees a symptom as an enemy to be defeated. The self asks, "What is this exhaustion trying to teach me?" It is a question that sees the symptom as a messenger to be understood. The ego asks frantically, "How can I be happy?" It is a question that treats happiness as a destination to be conquered. The self asks quietly, "What does joy feel like in my body right now?" It is a question that discovers happiness as a presence to be inhabited. Do you feel the difference? The first set of questions creates a tension, a need to strive, a problem to be solved. The second set of questions creates space, a sense of curiosity, a mystery to be lived. The first set is the language of the boardroom. The second is the language of the soul. Let's think about Chloe, the nurse. Her mind was a storm of how-to questions. How can I be a better nurse? How can I handle this difficult patient? How can I manage my time better? She was exhausted. The shift for her began not with an answer, but with a new question. One day, in a moment of quiet desperation, she stopped asking how to, and she asked a what is question. She asked, what am I pretending not to know? The answer that slowly surfaced was terrifying. I am pretending not to know that this is no longer my path. That single, honest question did more to change her life than 1,000 strategies. It didn't solve her problem overnight, but it revealed the truth. And the truth is the only ground upon which a new life can be built. So why, if these deeper questions are so powerful, do we avoid them like the plague? Why do we cling so desperately to the frantic surface-level how-tos? The reasons are profound and deeply human. First, we fear the answer. A true question from the self is not a gentle suggestion. It is an earthquake. The answer it reveals might demand profound, terrifying change. It might ask you to leave a job, to end a relationship, to move across the country, to disappoint people you love. The ego, whose prime directive is safety and the maintenance of the status quo, finds this possibility unacceptable. So, it keeps you busy. It keeps you endlessly tinkering with the engine so you never have to ask if you are driving in the wrong direction. Second, the persona's agenda. Our social mask is invested in the image of having it all figured out. A how-to question maintains this image. It says, I am in control, I just need a better strategy. A deep what is or why am I question is an admission of vulnerability. It is an admission of not knowing. It says, I am lost. And for the persona, that is a fate worse than death. So why, if these deeper questions are so powerful, do we avoid them like the plague? And finally, we live in a culture that is addicted to doing. Action is valued, contemplation is not. To sit in silence with a question that has no immediate answer can feel unproductive, indulgent, lazy. The inner critic we have spoken of will scream at you. Stop wasting time, get back to work, solve something. We have been conditioned to believe that our worth comes from the answers we produce, not from the depth of the questions we are willing to hold. So we stay on the surface. We chase the endless, exhausting game of how-to, believing we are being productive, when in reality, we are just running from the one conversation that truly matters, the conversation with our own soul. But what if we could change that? What if we could learn the art of holding a question, not as a problem to be solved, but as a sacred seed to be planted?
How then do we learn this new language? How do we practice the art of asking, not as a problem to be solved, but as a sacred seed to be planted? The first step is to realize that you already have the wisest teacher living inside of you. Your only task is not to find new information, but to create the quiet space for that inner wisdom to finally speak. This is not an intellectual exercise. It is a practice of the heart. Here are 3 simple, yet profoundly powerful ways to begin this inner dialogue. The first practice is called the sacred pause. Our minds are conditioned for reaction. A problem arises, and we instantly leap to the how-to. The sacred pause is a small act of rebellion against this frantic urgency. It is the conscious choice to create a space between the stimulus and the response. The next time you feel a surge of anxiety, a wave of confusion, or the sting of a problem, do not immediately ask, "How do I fix this?" Instead, pause. Take 3 slow, deep breaths, in through the nose and out through the mouth. And in the quiet space you have just created, gently ask a new question. What is the real question here? What is this feeling trying to tell me? This simple act, this rebellion of 3 breaths, is enough to shift you from the frantic boardroom of the ego into the quiet sanctuary of the self. It is the beginning of inner diplomacy. The second practice is journaling as inquiry. Most of us use a journal to record what happened. It is a logbook of the ego's activities. But we can transform it into a portal, a direct line of communication to the soul. To do this, you do not use the journal to find answers. You use it to ask the question and to listen. You sit with a deep question, one that truly matters to you, and you let the pen flow without judgment. Here are 3 of the most powerful questions you can carry into your journal. The first, what am I pretending not to know? This question bypasses the ego's defenses and speaks directly to your inner truth teller. The second, what is wanting to emerge in my life? This shifts the focus from what you want to control to what the larger intelligence of your life is trying to bring forth. And the third, perhaps the most powerful of all, if my soul had a voice, what would it say to me right now? And then you listen. You write whatever comes. You allow the whispers from that forgotten room to finally be heard. Pause for a moment here. What is the one "what is" or "who am I" question that is calling to you right now? In this quiet space. You don't need to know the answer. Simply honor the question. If you feel comfortable, share your new question in the comments. Let us witness the beginning of your sacred inquiry together. The third practice is a beautiful one, inspired by the great poet Rilke. He called it walking the question. Sometimes, a question is too big to be held by the conscious mind alone. It needs air. It needs space. So you take your question for a walk. You go out into nature, a park, a forest, a quiet street, and you carry the question with you, not as a burden to be solved, but as a quiet companion. You do not try to answer it with your analytical mind. You simply hold it. You feel its weight, its texture, and you pay attention to the world around you. The way the light filters through the leaves, the sound of a bird's song, a chance encounter. This is not a magical trick. It is the practice of allowing the larger world, the world of symbol and synchronicity, to participate in your inner dialogue. You are allowing the answer to find you, instead of frantically hunting for it. Let's go back to Mark, the project manager. His old question was, how do I fix my anxiety? Through this work, he began a new practice. His new question, the one he carried in his journal and on his walks, became, what is this anxiety trying to protect me from? And the answer, when it came, was not a strategy. It was a memory. The memory of a small boy terrified of disappointing his demanding father. His anxiety wasn't a flaw to be fixed. It was the echo of a child's love. This did not make the anxiety disappear overnight, but it transformed it from an enemy into a wounded part of him that needed his compassion. He stopped trying to fix it, and he began to heal it. That is the power of asking the right question.
So we arrive, not at a destination, but at a new way of walking. The journey inward does not begin with a map of answers. It begins with the compass of a single, honest question. The ultimate goal, as the great poet Rilke suggested, is not to find a single final answer. It is to learn to live in the question, to carry it with you, to let it breathe, to befriend the mystery of your own life instead of trying to conquer it. This continuous, curious inquiry is the very essence of a life that is truly alive. It keeps us growing, unfolding, connected to our deepest core. This is the heart of what Carl Jung called the journey of individuation. It is the process of becoming more fully and authentically yourself, not by adding more achievements, but by subtracting the need for them. It requires a deep surrender, a release of the ego's desperate need to know, to control, to have it all figured out. It is the quiet, courageous admission that the most beautiful parts of life are not the ones we plan, but the ones that unfold when we finally have the courage to ask, and then to listen. This is the great turning point, the shift from a life dictated by the external world's demands to a life guided by the internal world's wisdom. The power is returning to its rightful place, within you. You are no longer just the project manager of your life. You are becoming its poet, its mystic, its guide. So as we close this exploration, I invite you to one small act of commitment. For the next week, I invite you to become an archaeologist of your own questions. Notice the how-to questions that run on a loop in your mind, the frantic search for strategies. And then choose just one and gently rephrase it. Turn it from a question of the ego into a question of the self. For example, instead of the exhausted question, how can I be less stressed? Try asking the curious, gentle question, what does peace actually feel like in my body? Instead of, how do I find a meaningful career? Try asking, what is my soul trying to express through my work? This small shift is the beginning of the end of the war against yourself. It is the beginning of the quiet work of homecoming. This is where the real work begins. But be warned, when you begin to ask the real questions, you will begin to receive real answers. And those answers often come from the places you have been most afraid to look. They come from the exiled parts of your own being. They come from the shadow. And in our next journey together,
We will not run from it. We will turn to face it. And you will make the most important introduction of your life.